You're listening to the International Moving Podcast, your guide to moving to another country, brought to you by SDC International Shipping, LA's finest. An international move is exciting. It's a time to start over, establish a new business maybe, reestablish family ties, or retire where your budget will do more for you. Please enjoy today's episode, and if you have any questions about your international move, give us a call at 888-779-3962. That's 888-779-3962. In other words, make sure you have all of your paperwork in order. Now, the great thing about working with an international moving company when it comes time to make the move, let's say from California to Mexico, from Florida to Mexico, from, New England to Mexico, wherever you are in the country, is that when you work with a company like SDC International Shipping, this is a move we make on a weekly basis. I mean, there's always people moving to Mexico. There's people moving from the United States to Mexico. There's people moving from other countries here to the United States. And so we're familiar with all of the ins and outs. We could ask questions that you wouldn't even think of asking. So when you work with us, just know that you're working with somebody who is an expert in this particular move. And so one of the questions that I hear, let me just share with you some more information along these lines. There are particular questions that people ask, and let me just share a few of them with you. Sometimes people will ask questions like, well, how much a month would it cost for me to actually live in Mexico? And could I get away with like $1,000 a month type of life living there? And I would say $1,000 a month as of today, when I'm making this recording, April 2024, depending on where you want to live in Mexico, what would be a comfortable type of lifestyle for you, what your expenditures are. For example, some people have more expensive hobbies, they have higher food bills, maybe they buy a lot of wine and things of that nature, maybe they do more entertaining. Depending on your lifestyle is going to depend what that number will look like. I think that it would be possible for someone to live a comfortable lifestyle, not extravagant, on $1,000 a month in Mexico. And of course, you buy from the local markets, so your costs are low. You're not living in a 4,000 square foot mini mansion that costs a lot to maintain and so on and so forth. So yes, can you, as the bare minimum, would $1,000 a month do it? I would say yes. Now, again, I'm not living in Mexico on $1,000 myself, so I'm not saying that from personal experience. I'm basing this information on what I've heard from others who have been there and know others who are there. So I would say $1,000 a month, it is possible. The question is it probable based on the things that you like and on your personal tastes? Now, one of the other questions people ask happens to be around safety. We've all seen the movies and the Mexican cartels and the crime and all of that and the drugs. People will ask, what are the safest places in Mexico to live? I would say if you're an expat and your number one priority besides the overhead is safety and tranquility, then you're probably going to be looking at some of the cities along the Pacific or Caribbean coast like Cancun, Tulum, Cabo San Lucas, and places like that, because they are away from the border regions and there's a lot of tourism that goes there, and they're recommended by many as far as having a secure living environment. Now, other people have asked, how much would it cost? How much does a house cost in Mexico? Is there like a median number or something that I can get at least an idea of? And the last time I looked into this, this was last year, the average house price in Mexico was about 1.3 million Mexican pesos, which would be the equivalent of around $64,700 if you look on a website like Statista. So figure, just round up, $65,000 is an average house price. And if you're looking at an area, of course, that's very popular or more popular or closer to the water or right on the water, of course, that number will increase accordingly. I've talked to people who have basically, they went to Mexico, they found a place that they really liked, and but then they realized that if they upgraded it, they could have a nicer place than they've ever had in their lives, and for the same amount that they would be paying here. So in other words, you could live higher on the hog, as the saying goes, if you spent the exact same amount of money living there than you do here. Of course, that would make sense. But the real estate market there it varies. It's diverse. You can find a range of housing options based on what your budget is and based on the location, how close you want to be to the water, and so on. If you want to live in a more remote area, of course, that's not as popular, then of course it's going to cost less to live there. So, but just know that if you're going to make the journey with the help of SDC International Shipping, regardless of where it is that you ultimately choose, we'll be your moving partner in helping you get there. And working with a company like SDC helps to remove a lot of the stress that would otherwise be involved in this process if you were to do it alone. Sometimes you might think, well, why do I need a company like SDC International Shipping? Well, if you're going to move your household, we are an international household moving company. Then when you think of the fact that, well, Mexico really isn't that far away, but you want to make sure that your valuables remain intact throughout the entire moving process. And that covers everything from the packing, as it leaves your home, as it's transported in the shipping crates, how it's all put together. We can make sure that everything gets from point A to point B and arrives in the same condition that it left in. Very important. Also, we have experience with understanding how the visas work, what is allowed and what's not allowed, how to make sure everything clears customs and that you don't have any troubles like that. Also, if there's issues with needing to put things in storage temporarily, we have that covered on both sides of the border. And so working with a professional goes a long way to making the entire experience a lot less stressful and a lot smoother. If you want to ship a car to Mexico, we can help you do that also. We ship vehicles. We recommend shipping a vehicle inside of a container. It's much easier that way. Motorcycles and other types of vehicles can also be shipped inside of a container. You can go to Mexico's customs page and you can find details on moving household goods and motor vehicles to Mexico. They have quite a bit of information there. And so, even though Mexico is close, it is a significant move. I would say moving anywhere is significant because it involves the uprooting of what you're familiar with, of where you work, where your friends are located, what you do on a day-to-day basis into a different situation. And so having people that have experience in this area, talking to the right accountants or lawyers or attorneys if you need to, making sure that there aren't any surprises waiting for you, the preparation is definitely worth the time investment in doing so. All right, I think that's about all for today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Mexico is just one of those places that, like I said, we've been hearing about it for the last several years. I think we'll be hearing about it several years into the future. Will there be a cutoff point where people won't want to retire there or go there anymore? I would have to say yes. And this is just my opinion, not necessarily the opinion of SDC International Shipping, but I could see that time happening sooner rather than later. And I say that because when a certain location becomes popular, when it becomes known for its cost of living, it attracts people by the scores. And eventually what happens is that the cost of maintaining the infrastructure, everything that goes along with increased population, it creates the exact opposite of what people moved there for. So in other words, instead of having these scenic, tranquil beaches with a handful of people, instead you have eventually high-rise condominiums along the shore. And some people say that's progress. Some people say that's the future. I just say it's always been that way, and I could see it being that way also in the future. So if you're going to enjoy these places as they are today, I would say I would probably suggest moving sooner rather than later. And if you do decide to move at a later time, then we look into these places for what they are at that time. You know, Mexico may be different. We looked at some of these places like Puerto Vallarta. Maybe the Puerto Vallarta of 2027 will be a different place than it is today in 2024. I don't know. But that's the idea of talking about these things, researching them, looking into them. That's why I love sharing that information with those of you who are thinking about this subject, because I get to watch as these places transform, as they become popular, as places become less popular on the international moving scene. But all right, I think I'll put the bookmarker in it there. If you enjoyed this episode, go ahead, share it with a friend, share it on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, wherever you happen to be. We thank you for doing that. It allows us to reach people who would otherwise be very difficult to reach. There's a lot of content out there today, so we appreciate those of you who listen week in and week out. This is Jim. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I will see you in the next episode. All right, welcome back, everyone. This is Jim for SDC International Shipping. Great to be back here together again with you today, talking about the topic of international moving, international relocation, what goes into it, what it's like to live in certain destination countries, some of the benefits, cost of living, and so on. And I was thinking to myself just the other day that in the past, when a specific area or region, let's say just within the United States, became popular for maybe a lower cost of living and maybe a certain laid back lifestyle. Florida is a good example of it. In recent times, California in past times, people would go out west to for fame and fortune. New York City for many years was one of those places, although it was never really cost effective to live there. The opportunities were abundant in places like New York or Chicago, maybe even Boston, depending what it is that you did for a living. And over time, the cost of living, rents, real estate, all of those things began to increase as the population began to grow. And then when you factor in other things like inflation, of course, remember you hear stories about how your grandparents only paid X number of dollars for their first vehicle or for their first home, or what they remember a tank of gas costing per gallon back in the day. And it always increases. It never seems to go backwards. It never seems to go back to the way it used to be. But one of the things that happened between 2020 and 2024 is such a sharp increase percentage wise of inflation, where maybe the groceries cost 50% more, or in some cases 100% more, depending on whatever it is that you eat. And then the wages did not keep up with the inflation. And so we have a situation that is probably as intense as it has ever been in our lifetimes. We probably have to go back into the late 1920s, 1930s. And of course, back then you didn't have credit. And so it was either cash or nothing. Think about that. Imagine living today without credit, where it's cash or nothing. There's one thing about the convenience of credit. For example, if you pay your credit card off at the end of the month, you can put all of your groceries on your credit card. And then at the end of the month, you get maybe 3% back, I think, or 3% off, depending on what kind of credit card, 2 or 3%. It helps a little bit, I guess. It's better maybe than nothing. Of course, if you can't pay it off, then the amount that you're going to pay in interest is going to be, it's going to cause a problem sooner or later. It's only a matter of time. And so what we see today is more people depending on credit, because if it wasn't for credit, there wouldn't be food on the table. And, that's too bad. Now, my place here, of course, isn't to point the finger and blame any particular political party or belief system or anything. That's outside of my area of expertise. I just know that this has been happening for as far back as I can see. We just look at the decades of the past, stories of the past. You can see that people were always unhappy for the same basic reasons. And so we can argue whether or not we have it better, worse, or about the same today. It feels, when you're in the middle of it, of course, as bad as it can feel if you don't have the money to live comfortably wherever you're at. And so this is one of the motivations behind a lot of the relocations that we see today. Now, some relocations are done just because people want a different type of lifestyle. maybe you grew up in the city and you're done with that. You don't want to live in the hustle and bustle of modern life anymore. You're thinking more of a beach-like retreat where there's the wind and the sand and the waves of the maybe the Gulf of Mexico or a place similar to that. That's what you consider to be peaceful, a relaxing, more relaxing retirement than staying in a city. Or maybe you've been in a warm weather climate for years and years and you've had your fill of that and you want the exact opposite of that. There really isn't a right and a wrong. There's just what works for you as far as where is the ideal place for you to live. And today, it just so happens that the ideal place to live for a lot of people is the place that offers a lower cost of living. And Mexico happens to be one of those destinations. It was popular in the past few years. It's popular again here in 2024 as I'm making this recording. I think it will be a popular destination for several years to come. Now, one of the differences between moving to Mexico in 2024 and let's say 2022 is that the cost of real estate has increased. Now, it hasn't increased to the levels that we see here in the United States. And of course, your money will still go farther there than it will go here, especially depending if you live in areas like a Los Angeles or a New York or a Chicago or a Miami or any place like that. But Mexico continues to be very popular. Now, one of the things that's popular about it is its location. It's just not that far away. And I mean, all things being equal, there are people that enjoy living part of the year in Mexico, and then they come back and they visit their family in the summertime or for 3 months out of the year. There are legal requirements, of course, that go with this kind of a move. Before you make a permanent move, you can stay in the country up to 6 months under the current regulation. And that's great because it does give you that time to check out different areas, see what you like and what you don't like, maybe compare a few different areas with one another to see which one would be more to your liking. It's one thing to read about something, but it's another thing to experience it, of course, firsthand. If you're going to work in Mexico, you have to obtain a work visa or a temporary residency or a permanent residency. But also, there is a retirement visa, which is an option for those who are looking to retire and get out of the workforce altogether. So, to qualify for a temporary visa, you have to demonstrate a certain bank balance. The last time I checked, it was a balance that exceeded 27,000 over the previous year, or then it had a lesser amount over in the last 6 months. And I often wondered why they do that. They have these two extremes, like 27,000 or 1,600, let's say, in the past 6 months. And I guess that's because people do move money when they're considering this kind of a move. Things can change in their financial situation. But I think the bottom line is that they want to make sure that you're not in a position where you're going to be relying on the state for your health care or for your housing or to provide for you. And that's one of the things that's true no matter where you move. They want to make sure that they're granting residency or temporary residency to people who can care for themselves instead of having to rely on the state. Now, when we talk about expat friendly locations, we're talking about some of the expat cities, places known for expat cities like Puerto Vallarta. It's also pronounced Porto Vallarta, depending on who you ask. Actually, there's like three or four different pronunciations I've heard for this, but it's Porto, like Puerto Rico, and Vallarta. I pronounce it Puerto Vallarta. San Miguel de Allende, there's Merida, Lake Chapala, Tulum, and there's different expat locations that are very popular there. And then, of course, if you're not looking to enter into that retired or semi retired type of lifestyle, then let's say you're a student or you're in the academic world, maybe a Mexico City or a Merida would be more to your liking, or Monterey. There are also places that attract a lot of foreign professionals and businesses, such as Tijuana. So You have to understand that Mexico is quite a large country with many different areas. Sometimes you get an idea that a country is just one thing because you watch a documentary on it. For example, crime. You hear about the drug trade in Mexico and you think that well, this is everywhere. Well, you can make that same statement basically almost any country you can think of. I know here in the United States, you can look at a city and say, well, that's really a dangerous city. Of course, there's places that are more dangerous than others. But really, when you look at a topic like crime, of course, there's crime everywhere, unfortunately. And that's just one of the things that you have to take into account wherever you're moving. There are certain areas that are a better choice than others that have a lower number of violent crimes or things of that nature happening. So now, when we talk about the benefits of moving to Mexico from the United States, the benefits that were there in 2022 and 2023 are there today. And that includes cost of living. Mexico offers a lower cost of living compared with the US. That's just a blanket statement that you can make. It's true. No matter where you are in the United States, you can probably find a better cost of living somewhere in Mexico, and that encompasses things like food and housing and utilities. Now, it is true that there are places in Mexico where you can go to the same stores and shops that you would see here in the United States, and then the food is going to be comparable. But for example, you can go to a market and buy fresh beef from Mexico, not something that's imported, and you're going to pay a lot less. And so, whatever you buy that's farmed in Mexico, that's raised in Mexico, is going to cost much, much less than something that's imported. And that's the advantage that different places have. There are even within the United States, there are certain things that you can buy cheaper in certain states than others. It may not be a whole lot cheaper, but affordable cost of living is all the way at the top when it comes to reasons why people are relocating to Mexico. Number two is the community. The locals are known for being warm and hospitable in nature. And so you have the opportunity to connect with a new community, and that will give you a different type of life experience maybe than you've had before. You can learn, of course, the local language, which is recommended if you really want to enjoy that deeper kind of integration. Healthcare is always improving in Mexico. Mexico has made great strides over the decades to enhance its healthcare system, and the improved medical care for residents and expats alike will be in place for years to come. The proximity to the United States is something that's really important for a lot of people. And, I understand that. We have the landmass connected with ours, the close proximity. Mexico offers convenient and cost effective travel options between the two countries, and some expats may even have the opportunity to bring their own vehicle for added convenience. Of course, there's the coastal climate. We've already talked about that. There's a places like Riviera Maya. They have pleasant weather year round, sort of like Florida. So if you prefer the warmth of the summer or milder winters, then the coastal regions of Mexico offer a really diverse range of climates suited for a whole bunch of different preferences. So moving to Mexico from the US presents a blend of practical benefits. You have that cultural richness that you can take advantage of. There's the geographical advantages that it's still close to the United States. And that's why it's such a compelling choice today for people who are thinking about a relocation, an international relocation, on those looking for educational opportunities, people looking to experience the expat digital nomad lifestyle. From the young to the old, it seems like Mexico has a little bit of something for everyone. Now, one of the things, of course, you would have to keep in mind also in making preparations for this move is you have to organize all of your travel documents. So if you want to check it out, of course, you're going to have to make sure that your passports or any required visas are updated, that your family members are all current and valid. I think we can sum it up by saying that paperwork is going to be of vital importance. Documentation, visas, work permits, etc., no matter where you go in the world today, and Mexico is certainly no exception. All right, I think that will do it for today. Again, thanks so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you haven't visited our website yet or in a while, go ahead, check it out, sdcinternationalshipping.com. There's all kinds of articles there, lots of information on moving, no matter where you're moving from, where you're moving to. We have a plan that's just the right fit for your specific needs. You can give us a call at 877-339-0267. This is Jim. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Thanks for listening. Whether you're relocating within the country or moving to the other side of the world, we're here to help from start to finish. Connect with us today at 888-779-3962. That's 888-779-3962.